The fluorescent lights in the veterinary clinic's back room hummed like a death march. Dr. Sarah Chen checked her watch for the third time in 2 minutes. 11:47 a.m. 13 minutes until the court order became legally enforceable. He's still sedated from the transport, the animal control officer said, his voice flat with practiced detachment. Should make it easier. Through the reinforced glass window, the German Shepherd mix lay motionless on the steel examination table. Even unconscious, his body told stories, a landscape of old wounds, scars crisscrossing his shoulders, a notch missing from his left ear. His muzzle, more gray than black now, trembled with each labored breath. His name is Havoc, Sarah said quietly. His name was Havoc. The officer shifted his weight. After what he did to that handler, the judge was clear. Dangerous animal, no second chances. Sarah's hand rested on the syringe. Blue liquid, peaceful, final. She'd done this 100 times before. Mercy for the suffering, safety for the public. This should be routine. But Havoc's file was anything but routine. 6 years in military service, 2 tours, 14 confirmed enemy combatants neutralized, 3 soldiers saved from IED detection. Honorably discharged with his handler, Sergeant Marcus Webb, after a roadside bomb changed both their lives forever. Then the handler died. Suicide. The report was clinical, PTSD, survivor's guilt, severed connection to purpose. The dog went to the handler's brother, then another home, then another, each placement shorter than the last, aggressive toward men, unpredictable, violent without warning. The final incident, a shelter volunteer hospitalized, 32 stitches, permanent nerve damage. The courts agreed. Public safety demanded action. Sarah picked up the syringe. 11 minutes. The clinic door burst open. Stop. For the love of God, stop. The man in the wheelchair moved with surprising speed, his upper body propelling him forward with the kind of strength that comes from compensating for what's lost. His arms were corded with muscle, his face weathered and scarred on one side, burned tissue that had healed in twisted patterns. Sir, this is a restricted area, the officer began. Captain James Rutherford, U.S. Army Rangers, retired. The man's voice carried command even from a seated position. I'm here under the Good Samaritan provision, Section 47B of the State Animal Welfare Code. I'm claiming custody. Sarah blinked. The what? It's real, James said, thrusting forward a folder thick with legal documents. Any veteran with demonstrated animal handling experience can claim custody of a military working dog facing euthanasia, provided they can prove adequate care capabilities. My lawyer filed the injunction 20 minutes ago. The officer grabbed his radio. I need to verify faster. James locked eyes with Sarah. Because I'm not leaving here without that dog. The VA hospital's rehabilitation wing smelled like antiseptic and crushed hopes. James Rutherford had memorized every ceiling tile in his room. 247. He'd counted them daily for 6 months. Your progress has plateaued, Dr. Morrison said, his tone gentle but firm. The spinal injury is permanent, James. T10 complete. We've discussed this, so I've hit my ceiling. James stared at those tiles. Wheelchair for life. Got it. What you do with that life is still your choice. Morrison set down his tablet. Have you considered the therapy dog program? Many of our patients, I don't need a pet. I'm talking about purpose. Morrison leaned forward. You trained dogs in the Army. Before you became a ranger, you were K9 unit for 3 years. That skill doesn't disappear because you can't walk. James said nothing. What was the point? His life before the explosion felt like someone else's biography. Lieutenant James Rutherford, decorated soldier, expert marksman, marathon runner, engaged to be married. That man died on a dusty road in Kandahar when an RPG turned his spine to shrapnel. This man? This man counted ceiling tiles. There's a situation, Morrison continued. A military working dog scheduled for euthanasia. I'm on the advisory board for Veterans Second Chance. We try to match retired service dogs with disabled vets. But this one, he paused. No one wants him. He's been labeled too dangerous. Then why tell me? Because I read his file. And yours. Morrison slid a tablet across. His handler was killed. He's been traumatized, misplaced, misunderstood. He attacked someone, yes. But James, look at the incident report. Really look. James scrolled through the pages. Security camera footage stills showed the moment. Havoc lunging, teeth bared, the volunteer screaming. But there were earlier frames. A man approaching the kennel, something in his hand. The volunteer stepping between them. Havoc's attention wasn't on her, it was on the man. The man holding what looked like a cattle prod, Morrison said quietly. The volunteer got caught in the middle when Havoc went after the actual threat. But she's the one who needed stitches, so she's the one whose complaint stuck. The man? Walked away, claimed he was just checking the equipment. And the court? Didn't care about context. They see a dangerous dog. Euthanasia order is already signed. Morrison stood. The execution is scheduled for Saturday. I can't tell you what to do, James. But I can tell you that sometimes the things everyone else calls monsters are just warriors that nobody understands anymore. After Morrison left, James sat in the dark of his hospital room. On his phone, he pulled up everything he could find about Havoc. Military service photos showed a younger dog, alert and magnificent, sitting beside his handler, Sergeant Marcus Webb, grinning in desert camo. Then the after photos. Webb in a hospital bed, Havoc beside him, both looking like ghosts. An article about Webb's suicide, a tribute page with condolences. Nothing about what happened to the dog. James looked at his own reflection in the darkened window. Haunted eyes, scars that would never fully fade, a body that no longer obeyed commands. He understood monsters. At midnight, he made the call to Morrison's lawyer friend. The injunction is valid, the officer said, lowering his radio, his expression caught between relief and frustration. You have 48 hours to demonstrate adequate care facilities before the state reviews the case. 48 hours? Sarah's voice pitched upward. Captain Rutherford, with all respect, this dog is... A veteran, James interrupted. Same as me. He's unstable. He attacked someone. He defended himself against someone with a weapon. James's jaw tightened. There's a difference. You can't possibly care for an aggressive animal from a wheelchair. The words hung in the air. James's face went carefully blank. Doctor, I've cleared buildings full of insurgents. I've trained dogs to detect explosives that save dozens of lives. I've commanded men in combat zones. What I can't do is walk. His voice dropped to something cold and precise. That doesn't make me helpless, and it sure as hell doesn't mean I need your permission to save a life. Sarah flushed. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. James moved his wheelchair closer to the window. Behind the glass, Havoc remained motionless. Everyone means it. The looks, the lowered voices, the assumptions. You see the chair first, the man second, if at all. He pressed his palm against the glass. I see him the same way you see me. Broken, dangerous, better off dead than dealing with the complications. James turned back to her. And I'm telling you, you're wrong about both of us. Sarah looked at the dog, then at the man. Something in her chest twisted. If I release him to you, she said slowly, and he hurts someone, then I take full responsibility. James's eyes never wavered, but he won't. Not if someone finally treats him like what he is. And what's that? A soldier who never got to come home. James's adapted ranch house sat on 3 acres outside the city, a gift from a veterans charity that felt more like pity than kindness. Tonight, it felt like providence. The animal control van pulled up at sunset. They'd kept Havoc sedated for transport. 2 officers carried him on a stretcher, still unconscious, through the wheelchair-accessible entrance into the converted garage James had spent 5 days turning into a kennel. Reinforced doors, one officer noted approvingly. Security cameras. Smart. I didn't survive Afghanistan by being careless, James replied. They positioned Havoc in the large floor pen, soft bedding, water bowls, space to move. As they removed the stretcher, the dog's eyes cracked open. Unfocused, confused. Then he saw James. Havoc's entire body went rigid. Easy, James said softly. He didn't move closer. Nobody's hurting you here. The officers backed away. The sedation should wear off in an hour. Call immediately if I know what to do. James kept his eyes on the dog. After they left, the house fell silent except for Havoc's ragged breathing. The dog had pushed himself upright, hackles raised, teeth bared in warning. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Yeah, I know, James said, staying where he was, several feet from the pen. Strange place, strange person. Every instinct you have is screaming danger. He rested his hands on his wheelchair armrests, making himself as non-threatening as possible. But I need you to listen. You're not crazy. You're not a monster. You're just scared. Havoc's growl intensified. Your handler died, James continued, his voice steady. Marcus Webb. He was your person. He was your whole world. And then he was gone, and nobody explained why. Nobody asked what you needed. They just moved you. Again and again. Different homes, different rules, different hands that didn't understand. The growling faltered. I can't walk. Havoc. 3 years ago, my legs worked. I could run 5 miles without thinking about it. Now? James gestured at his wheelchair. This is my life, and everyone I knew before, they don't know what to do with me. They're scared. They're uncomfortable. They think it's kinder to stay away than to see me like this. He leaned forward slightly. So I understand when you bite the people trying to help, because sometimes help looks like threat. Sometimes kindness hurts worse than cruelty, and sometimes the only thing that makes sense is making sure no one gets close enough to hurt you again. Havoc's ears flicked, forward, back, uncertain. But here's what I know, James said. You saved lives. You did your job with honor. What happened after doesn't erase that. And you deserve better than dying on a steel table because the world decided you were too broken to fix. He reached slowly into the bag beside his wheelchair. Havoc tensed, preparing to lunge. James pulled out a photograph. He held it up so Havoc could see. Marcus Webb in full combat gear, Havoc sitting alert beside him, both of them looking at the camera. A moment of calm in a war zone. He loved you, James said quietly. I didn't know him, but I know that look. That's the face of a soldier who knows his partner has his back. That's the face of a man who trusts you with his life. Havoc stared at the photo. A sound escaped him, not a growl, something else. Something that sounded like breaking. He's gone, James continued. And that's not your fault. War takes people, sometimes in explosions, sometimes in quieter ways after they come home. But Havoc, his voice cracked. You kept living, even when they gave up on you, even when they called you a monster. You kept living. That takes more courage than most humans ever find. The dog's legs trembled. He sank slowly to the floor, eyes still locked on James. So here's the deal, James said. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to like me, but you do have to survive. Because I didn't fight this hard to save you just so you could give up now. He placed the photo on the floor near the pen. We're both soldiers who can't go back to who we were, but maybe we can figure out who we are now. He wheeled himself backward, giving space. I'll be right here, all night. You're not alone. James positioned his wheelchair across the room and waited. Hours passed. Midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. Havoc didn't sleep. He paced. He watched. Every muscle coiled for violence. James didn't sleep either. He watched back. As dawn light crept through the garage windows, something shifted. Havoc stopped pacing. He stood at the front of the pen, staring at James. Then slowly, so slowly, he lowered himself to his belly. Ears flicked forward. Not in aggression. In question. Yeah, James whispered. I'm still here. For the first time in 6 years, Havoc closed his eyes in the presence of another living being and slept day. One morning, James woke to find Havoc awake, watching him. When James moved, the dog tensed but didn't attack. Progress. Breakfast, James announced, opening a can of premium dog food, the expensive kind Morrison had recommended. He placed the bowl inside the pen using a long-handled reacher, maintaining distance. Havoc didn't eat. He stared at the food like it might be poisoned. Your choice, James said, but you should know I'm not much of a cook, so this is as good as it gets around here. He made his own breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee that tasted like regret, and ate within Havoc's line of sight. The dog watched every movement. At noon, James checked his phone. Message from Dr. Chen, state inspector, coming tomorrow afternoon. Needs to see interaction, obedience, safety protocols. No demonstration equal to no custody. Right, James muttered. No pressure. He looked at Havoc, who had finally eaten half the food. We have 30 hours to convince a bureaucrat that you're not going to rip anyone's throat out. Any ideas? Havoc stared. Back, expressionless. Yeah, me neither. Day 1. Afternoon. Physical therapy. James had a home setup. Parallel bars, resistance bands, weights. He worked through his exercises within view of the kennel, maintaining routine. Havoc watched. His eyes tracked every movement with the focus of a trained military dog. When James struggled with an upper body pull, grunting with effort, Havoc stood, alert. I'm fine, James panted. Just old wounds, nothing dramatic. But the dog didn't settle. His attention fixed on James like he was reading a tactical situation. When James finished, Havoc sat. The military position, perfect posture, you remember, James said softly. You remember your training. Havoc's tail moved, once. Brief. Good boy, James said instinctively. The tail moved again. Day 1. Evening. James opened the pen door, not wide, just a crack, enough for air to flow, for the barrier to become less absolute. Havoc could have pushed through. Instead, he backed away, giving James space. I'm going to sit here, James said, positioning his wheelchair near the opening. You can come out if you want. Or not. Your choice. He pulled out his tablet and pretended to read. But his peripheral vision stayed locked on the dog. An hour passed. Then Havoc moved, not toward James, toward the photograph still, lying on the floor, Marcus Webb's photo. He sniffed it, sat beside it, and something in his posture crumpled. This was grief, raw and unprocessed, and finally allowed to surface. James felt his own throat tighten. "I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry he's gone." Havoc looked up. His eyes met James's, and for a moment, two broken soldiers understood each other completely. Day 2, morning, 24 hours until inspection. "Okay," James said, wheeling himself to the now open pen. "I need to touch you. Not for me. For them. They need to see you're safe." He extended his hand, palm down, unmoving. "If you bite me, they win. You go back to that table. So I'm trusting you not to make me regret this." Havoc stared at the hand. Every instinct screamed threat. Every experience taught that human touch meant pain. But this human had slept across from him, had fed him, had shown him Marcus's photo, had called him a soldier. Havoc leaned forward, sniffed James's fingers. Once, twice. Didn't bite. "Good," James breathed. "So good." He rested his palm on Havoc's head for exactly 3 seconds, then withdrew. Havoc didn't flinch. "We're getting somewhere," James said. Day 2, afternoon, 12 hours until inspection, the real test. James had called in a favor, another veteran, Miguel Santos, who'd served with James before the injury. Miguel arrived with his wife and 8-year-old daughter. "You sure about this?" Miguel asked, eyeing Havoc through the window. "No," James admitted. "But if he can't handle other people, they'll never let him stay. And if he attacks Maria, he won't. You can't know that." "Yes," James said quietly. "I can." They entered slowly. Miguel first. Havoc's hackles raised immediately. Male, adult, threat profile. "Sit," James said firmly. Havoc's military training kicked in. He sat, but every muscle remained coiled. "This is Miguel," James told the dog. "He's pack. He's safe." Miguel knelt slowly, making himself smaller. "Hey, soldier. I heard you've had a rough time," Havoc growled. "It's okay," Miguel said. "I'm scared too. You're pretty intimidating." The honesty seemed to penetrate. Havoc's growl faded. Then Maria entered. The little girl had been coached, slow movements, no direct eye contact, soft voice. But she was 8. 8-year-olds don't do protocols perfectly. She saw Havoc and gasped. "He's beautiful," and walked straight toward him. "Maria, no." Miguel started. But Havoc didn't attack. He did something no one expected. He bowed his head and closed his eyes, the canine sign of complete submission, of trust. Maria gently touched his scarred muzzle. "You're not a monster. You're just sad." Havoc leaned into her hand, and Miguel Santos, decorated veteran, hardened, soldier, had to turn away to hide tears. "I'll testify," he told James. "Whatever you need. I'll tell them this dog is safe." Day 2, evening, 4 hours until inspection. James sat with Havoc on the floor. He'd transferred from his wheelchair, showing the dog that vulnerability didn't equal weakness. "Tomorrow, a stranger comes," he said. "They're going to test you. It might be scary. But Havoc," he looked the dog in the eyes, "you've faced enemy fire. You've saved lives under combat conditions. You can handle one skeptical bureaucrat." Havoc rested his head on James's leg. "I won't let them take you," James promised. "Not without a fight." The dog sighed, deep and long. The sound of someone who'd been holding their breath for years, finally exhaling. State Animal Control Inspector Patricia Vance had a reputation. Fair, but uncompromising. She'd signed off on euthanizing 17 dogs in 5 years. She didn't take chances with public safety. She arrived exactly on time, clipboard in hand, expression neutral. "Captain Rutherford," she said, shaking his hand firmly. "I've read your application. Impressive credentials. But credentials don't control a traumatized, violent classified animal." "He's not violent," James said. "He's protective. There's a difference. Semantics don't matter when someone's in the hospital." She gestured toward the house. "Show me what you've got." The demonstration area was ready, open space, clear sight lines, emergency protocols posted. Havoc waited in the kennel, watching through the window. "First, I need to see basic obedience," Vance said. "Sit, stay, heel. Can he take commands from you?" James opened the kennel door. "Havoc, come." The dog emerged, alert but calm. "Sit." Havoc sat. Down. He dropped to his belly. "Stay." James wheeled himself 20 feet away, turned back. "Come." Havoc walked, not ran, directly to James's side. Sat at heel position, eyes up, awaiting the next command. Vance made a note. "That's well trained, but the question is stability under stress. I'm going to approach you aggressively. I need to see his response. He might see you as a threat," James warned. "That's the point." She moved forward, posture dominant, voice raised. "Get away from that dog! Move now!" Havoc's lips peeled back, a warning growl rumbling deep. James said one word, easy. The growl stopped. Havoc remained seated, but his body was clearly positioned between James and Vance. Protective, not aggressive. "Interesting," Vance said. "He's guarding you, not attacking me." She crouched down, making herself less threatening. "Hey soldier, I heard you've been through hell." Havoc's ears flicked forward. "I also heard you saved your handler's life 3 times, she continued. "That you can detect explosives from 40 meters away. That you never, not once, failed a mission." She looked at James. "Is that true?" "According to his service record, yes." "Then why is he classified as dangerous?" "Because," James said carefully, "after his handler died, he was placed with people who didn't understand him, who saw his training as aggression, who punished him for doing exactly what he was taught to do, protect." Vance stood. "The volunteer he attacked, I read that report. It said unprovoked assault. It was wrong." James pulled up his tablet, showing her the security footage Morrison had obtained. "Watch the timestamp. That's a cattle prod. The volunteer got caught between Havoc and an actual threat." Vance watched the video twice. Her expression hardened. This wasn't in the court file. The court wanted a simple solution to a complicated problem. The court wanted to avoid a lawsuit. She closed her clipboard. "Captain Rutherford, I'm going to be honest with you. I've put down a lot of dogs, more than I like to think about. And every single time I tell myself it's necessary, for safety, for the greater good." She looked at Havoc. "But I've also seen what happens when we write off anyone, human or animal, who doesn't fit into neat categories, when we decide that broken means disposable." Her voice softened. "My brother came back from Iraq with PTSD. Everyone told us he was dangerous, unstable, better off institutionalized." She paused. "He wasn't dangerous, he was suffering. And he needed someone to believe that healing was possible." "What happened to him?" James asked. "He runs a veteran support group now. He's saved 14 lives that I know of, all because one person, our mother, refused to give up on him." She extended her hand to Havoc. "May I?" James nodded. "Havoc, friend." The dog sniffed her hand, allowed the touch. Vance scratched behind his ears, finding the spot that made his back leg twitch. "You're not a monster, are you? You're just a good boy who's been through terrible things." She straightened, opened her clipboard, and signed the bottom of the custody form. "Conditional approval," she said. 6-month probationary period. Monthly check-ins. Any incident, any at all, and this gets revisited." She looked James in the eye. "But I believe you can do this. And I believe he deserves the chance." After she left, James sank down beside Havoc. The dog leaned against him, solid and warm and alive. "We did it," James whispered. "You're home." Havoc's tail wagged, slowly at first, then faster, until his entire body wiggled with something that looked like joy. The Veterans Therapy Center opened on a Tuesday. Second Chances Ranch, the sign read, crafted from reclaimed wood by volunteers. James Rutherford wheeled himself to the podium, Havoc sitting alert at his side. The crowd was smaller than he'd hoped. 17 people, mostly press-ganged friends and family, but that was okay. "You started somewhere. Thank you for coming," he began. 6 months ago, I made a promise to a dog that everyone had given up on. I told him that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. That surviving trauma doesn't make you a monster. That second chances are earned by choosing to. Keep fighting." Havoc's ears pricked forward at James's voice. What I didn't know then was that I wasn't just saving him. He was saving me. James's hand rested on Havoc's head. "This center exists because someone believed that a wheelchair-bound veteran and a supposedly violent dog could do something meaningful together. Dr. Morrison," he nodded to his former physician in the audience, "you saw what no one else did. You saw 2 soldiers who needed a mission." Morrison smiled, eyes suspiciously bright. "Second Chances Ranch will pair rescued military working dogs with disabled veterans. We'll provide training, support, and a place where being broken is just the starting point, not the ending, where healing happens together." Miguel Santos stood in the back, his daughter Maria on his shoulders. She waved at Havoc, whose tail wagged once in recognition. "We have our first placement next week," James continued. "A bomb detection dog from the Marines and a sergeant who lost both legs in Fallujah. They've both been told they're too damaged to be useful anymore." His jaw tightened. "We're going to prove that's a lie." Applause rippled through the small crowd. After the ceremony, James and Havoc walked, one rolling, one padding alongside, through the property. Kennels in the barn, training areas, a therapy space with windows overlooking the hills. "What do you think?" James asked. "Good enough?" Havoc bumped his nose against James's hand. "Yeah," James agreed. "It'll do." A car pulled up. Dr. Chen stepped out carrying a file folder. "Dr. Chen," James said, surprised. "I didn't expect you. I wanted to see it for myself." She looked around, professional mask slipping to reveal genuine emotion. "James, I almost killed him. I had the syringe in my hand. You were following orders." "No," she said firmly. "I was taking the easy way out. It's simpler to end a problem than to solve it. Safer to avoid complications than to do the hard work." She held out the folder. "This is a list of 12 military working dogs currently classified as unadoptable. All scheduled for euthanasia in the next 90 days. James opened the folder. Photos stared back. A Belgian Malinois with a scarred face, a Labrador missing an eye, a pit bull mix with aggressive stamped in red across his file. "I can't promise funding," Chen continued. "I can't promise the state will make this easy, but I can promise to fight for every single one of them, if you'll take them." James looked at Havoc. The dog met his gaze with those intelligent amber eyes, eyes that had seen combat, betrayal, abuse, and finally, redemption. "We'll take them," James said. "All of them." The documentary crew's question was simple. "What do you want people to know?" James Rutherford, now 42, sat in his office at Second Chance's ranch, surrounded by photos of success stories. 73 placements, 68 still active, 0 incidents. Beside him, Havoc dozed in a patch of sunlight, older now, moving slower, but still alert when needed. "People look at broken things and see endings," James said. "A shattered leg, a traumatized mind, a dog that bites. They see the damage and assume that's the whole story." He reached down to scratch Havoc's ears. The dog leaned into the touch, sighing contentedly. "But what if the damage isn't the ending? What if it's the beginning?" James looked directly at the camera. Havoc was 11 minutes away from a lethal injection. 11 minutes. They'd written him off as a monster, a liability, a problem to be eliminated. Havoc opened one eye, tracking James's voice. "Instead, he saved my life 3 times. Once from a medical emergency I didn't even know I was having, twice from depression that almost won. He's helped place and train 73 other veterans with their partners. He's taught children about courage, shown other dogs how to trust again, and reminded everyone who meets him that the things we dismiss as too broken to matter are often the things we need most." The camera zoomed in on Havoc's face, scarred, gray-muzzled, beautiful. "So when people ask what they should know, it's this: the monster they tried to kill became the teacher who saved hundreds of lives. The veteran they pitied became the voice for thousands of dismissed soldiers, human and canine alike. And the ending that everyone accepted as inevitable?" James smiled. "That was actually just the beginning of the most important mission either of us ever had." Havoc's tail thumped against the floor. Steady, strong, alive. In 2024, Second Chance's ranch placed its 200th veteran dog team. Havoc lived to age 14, passing peacefully in his sleep with James by his side. His legacy continues through the Havoc Foundation, which has saved over 400 military working dogs from euthanasia and placed them with disabled veterans nationwide. James Rutherford continues his work, telling anyone who will listen, what the world calls monsters are often just warriors waiting for someone to see them clearly. Sometimes, seeing clearly changes everything.